I'd been dreading the move for weeks. My tiny apartment in the city, a third-floor walk-up with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, had been home for 5 years. It was a mess of memories, late nights with friends, quiet mornings with coffee and a book, and the ache of a breakup that still lingered like a bruise. But the lease was up, the rent was climbing, and I'd found a new place across town, a small house with a yard and room to breathe. The problem was getting there. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling, my back was already complaining, and I'd underestimated how much stuff I'd accumulated. My friends were busy, and hiring movers was out of the budget. I was on my own, or so I thought. The morning of the move, I was hauling a box of books down the stairs when I nearly tripped. Sweat stung my eyes, and I was cursing under my breath when a voice came from behind me. "Need a hand?" I turned to see a guy standing at the bottom of the stairs, leaning against the railing like he'd been there all morning. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just past his ears and a smile that felt too easy for 8 a.m. on a Saturday. His name, I'd learn later, was Nicholas. He wore a faded green t-shirt and jeans, his arms tan and strong like he spent his days doing something more physical than my desk job. I hesitated, not used to strangers offering help in a city where everyone kept to themselves. "I'm good," I said, adjusting the box in my arms. It was heavier than I'd remembered. "You sure?" He raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "That box looks like it's about to win." His voice had a warmth to it, like he was teasing but didn't mean any harm. I laughed despite myself, and before I knew it, he was taking the box from me, carrying it down the last few steps with ease. "Where's this going?" he asked, glancing back. I pointed to the rented truck parked out front, feeling a mix of relief and suspicion. "You don't have to do this," I said, following him. "I mean, you don't even know me." He set the box in the truck and turned, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I'm Nicholas. Now we're not strangers." His grin was disarming, and I felt my guard slip a little. He didn't wait for me to argue, just headed back up the stairs to grab another box. I stood there for a second, trying to figure out what his deal was. People didn't just help like this, not without wanting something, did they? By noon, we'd loaded half the truck. Nicholas worked like he'd been hired for the job, lifting furniture I'd been dreading tackling alone. He didn't talk much at first, just asked where things went, or if I wanted to keep certain boxes together. But as the hours passed, bits of him started coming through. He was new to the neighborhood, he said, just moved in a block away. He worked as a carpenter, which explained the calluses on his hands and the way he handled my rickety bookshelf like it was nothing. He had a quiet confidence, but not the kind that felt like he was showing off. It was more like he knew who he was and didn't need to prove it. We took a break around lunchtime. Sitting on the tailgate of the truck with bottles of water I'd grabbed from a corner store. The sun was high, and the city hummed around Uscars honking, kids laughing somewhere down the street. I was starting to relax, maybe because of the progress we'd made, maybe because Nicholas had a way of making things feel less heavy. "So," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead, "what's your story? You go around helping random guys move their junk?" He laughed, a low, warm sound. "Not usually. I was just walking by, saw you struggling, and thought, why not?" He took a sip of water, his eyes catching mine for a moment longer than necessary. "Plus, you looked like you could use a friend." The word friend hung in the air, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. I'd been single for a while, too focused on work and getting through the day to think about dating. But there was something about the way he said it, the way his gaze lingered, that stirred something in me. Not hope, exactly, but a kind of curiosity I hadn't felt in a long time. We kept working, and by late afternoon, the truck was loaded. My old apartment was empty, just echoes and scuff marks on the floor. Nicholas helped me lock up, and I offered to buy him dinner as a thank you. "There's a pizza place nearby," I said, feeling awkward. "If you're up for it." He nodded, that same easy smile on his face. Pizza sounds perfect. Over slices of pepperoni, we talked more. He told me about growing up in a small town, how he'd left to find something bigger, something that felt like his. I shared a little about my life, my job as a graphic designer, the way the city sometimes felt too big and too small at the same time. The conversation flowed easily, like we'd known each other longer than a day. But there was a moment when he reached for his drink and his hand brushed mine that made my heart skip. It wasn't accidental, not entirely. His eyes met mine again, and I saw something there, interest, maybe, or something deeper. When we parted ways that night, he handed me his number, written on a scrap of paper from his wallet. "In case you need help unloading," he said, but his tone suggested it wasn't just about the move. I took the paper, my fingers tingling where they'd touched his, and watched him walk down the street, his silhouette fading into the evening. That night, lying on a mattress in my new half-unpacked house, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Nicholas had come out of nowhere, a stranger who'd made a grueling day feel almost good. But there was something else, something I couldn't shake. The way he'd looked at me, the way he'd stayed longer than he needed. To it felt like more than kindness, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that might mean. The new house was a disaster zone, all cardboard boxes and bare walls that echoed every step I took. I'd been sleeping on a mattress tossed on the living room floor, surrounded by stacks labeled in my sloppy handwriting kitchen stuff, clothes, random junk I didn't even remember owning. This little house with its patchy yard and creaky back door was supposed to be my fresh start, a place to rebuild after years in a cramped apartment. But, staring at the mess, it felt more like I'd bitten off more than I could chew. Every box I opened was a time capsule, a faded photo from a road trip, a cracked mug my ex left behind, a notebook full of half-baked dreams from a younger version of me. Unpacking wasn't just about furniture, it was about facing myself, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Nicholas kept creeping into my thoughts. His number, scrawled on that scrap of paper from moving day, sat on my kitchen counter like a challenge. I'd catch myself staring at it while I waited for my coffee to brew, my thumb hovering over my phone. That day we'd spent hauling boxes had been exhausting, but it was also the first time in ages I'd laughed without forcing it. His easy smile, the way he'd carried my heaviest stuff like it was nothing. The spark when his hand brushed mine at the pizza place, it all stuck with me, but so did the fear. I'd been alone for 2 years, ever since my last relationship crashed and burned. I'd gotten good at keeping people at a distance, and the idea of letting someone in, even someone like Nicholas, made my chest tight. By day 3, I was drowning. The boxes seemed to multiply overnight, and my motivation was buried under a pile of takeout containers. I grabbed my phone and texted him before I could overthink it, still buried under all this stuff. "Any chance you're free?" His reply pinged back in minutes. "Be there in an hour. Need help with those boxes." I could picture his grin, that teasing edge in his voice, and it loosened something in me. He showed up with a toolbox swinging from one hand and a coffee for me in the other. "Figured you'd need this," he said, passing me the cup. His fingers grazed mine, and there it was, again that jolt, like a circuit completing. He was in a grey hoodie and worn jeans, his dark hair tucked behind his ears, and he looked more at home in my half-empty house than I did. Where do we start? He asked, eyeing the chaos like it was a puzzle he couldn't wait to solve.